What are you giving up? What are you giving up for Lent? You know, self-denial. What are you giving up for Lent? You know, whatever you're giving up, let it be in service to moving forward. There's no use, there's no reason to give anything up unless it serves something better, unless it serves something greater. A plant is not pruned simply to cut it back, but because it can give forth greater blossoms, greater fruit. And so you, the plant of your soul, you may choose to give something up, but let's turn it around. Let's ask ourselves, what is it that we're committing to for Lent? What are we committing to for Lent? The talk title is actually My Lenten Commitment. I clothe myself with generous spirit, and every day I let it move with me in everything I do, wherever I go. And I'm using this as a template for you. You got to come up with your own. But I'm going to challenge you to come up with something that you're committing to for Lent. And during these 40 days, leading up to that resurrecting consciousness which Easter represents for us, you'll be working with your commitment and then ask yourself, what's standing in the way of this? And that's what you want to give up for Lent. In my case, it's that yammering little voice in my head that comments on everything. The commentary. You know, the political commentary, the commentary that knows it and is talking about it and knows what's going on. You know? That commentary. The critical little part of myself. And that's what I'm giving up for Lent. And so when you hear me do that, mind your own business. No. No, because that's what you're giving up for. No. Seriously. If you hear me do that, just tell me about it. But you know, that little voice in me, but I'm not because I'm giving it up, but because it's holding me back. So, life is always progressive. It's always a movement forward. You know, I was just reading this morning, Warren Buffett's 10 Secrets for Success. And Warren Buffett's very aware of unity. His first cousin was on our board down in Albuquerque. And he reads Daily Word, and he knows all about our philosophy. And he sounds very much like a unity guy. And one of the things he talked about was that the difference between a person who's successful and a person who's very successful is that a person who's very successful says no more often. But when they say yes, they really mean yes. So what's your yes first? You can't build on a no. You got to start with your yes. Find out what you're committed to. What you're committed to. And then everything unlike it, prune it away. So what is your commitment? What is your commitment? And it might be something like to show up in love in this world, to be kinder, to be more. You might think, well, to be less critical. Well, that might be something you give up. But what is the growth factor? To grow in my spiritual awareness, to become more Christ-like, not in a religious sense, but in a spiritual sense, more. Living your life in a spirit of universal harmony and peace and justice. Living your life in a spirit of universal goodness and healing. To be a force for good in this world. I don't know. You got to come up with your own. And then ask yourself, what's standing in the way of it? And that's what you want to give up for Lent. So we're talking about here not being a Pharisee. Okay, I'm going to introduce that concept because Jesus was very easy on a lot of people. He was easy on the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the people that cheated other people, the criminals. He was easy on even the people who were the guerrilla warriors and murdered other people, but he wasn't easy on the Pharisees. I'm not going to read it to you, but I got 3 pages in fine print of what's called the 7 woes. And you don't hear it much in churches, especially in unity churches, because Jesus is really hammering those Pharisees. And what's a Pharisee? Well, Pharisee meant separated ones. And we're really not talking about people out there. We're talking about the person in ourselves that separates ourselves from our own spiritual essence. Separates ourselves from the spiritual essence of others. Separates ourselves from life itself. Jesus said, I came to bring life, and I bring it more abundantly. Not the spirit of negativity, but the spirit of life abundantly. And so he really said, the people, in those days, imagine that, they had them in those days. Actually, these were the original ones who came up with the idea of sending people to hell if they didn't agree with you. They were the ones. And they were the ones also who said that, you have to follow all of our rules. And never mind what the spirit is, you got to follow all our rules. But, Jesus because of them, purposely broke a lot of the rules to show them it's not about the rules. He's always breaking rules. Breaking religious rules because Jesus was not religious. That's what got him in trouble. He did say something though. He said, I'll give you a new commandment, that you love one another as I've loved you. You've got to love one another. And everyone will know through this that you're my follower, that you love one another. It's that love, that spirit of love, that spirit of inclusiveness, that spirit of generosity, that generous spirit. What is that generous spirit in you? Why did we do that visualization in the meditation of a robe or a blanket? What was it for you? Some kind of unbelievably soft, energetic something of love, of grace, of peace. Because we got to start somewhere. We got to do something that's simple. We've got to do something that we can commit to, that we can put on in our awareness and our consciousness. Can you commit to something during this Lenten season, during these 40 days? Can you commit to something? And it's not that self-denial. It's not that cutting yourself out. You know, Jesus said, don't be like the Pharisees, and then he went on for pages. But what he was talking about is that don't be a separated one. That's what Pharisee meant. Within yourself, separate from what? From your joy, from your expression of love. You know, I was such a separated one. I didn't even buy a car that had a radio in it. I had a car with no radio. I had no rugs. You had to pay extra for the mats. I didn't have rugs. I had vinyl rubber floors. And I was driving in my little Econo box on my way to Las Vegas for a minister's conference. It's the truth. And I was driving there, and of course, I'm driving through the desert, and you know, you kind of hallucinate through the desert because there's nothing to see, especially when you don't have a radio. And I'm driving along, and all of a sudden I get the feeling, get a new car, it will change your life. I'm thinking, get a new car? Well, first of all, I'm not a materialistic person. I don't need a new car. This little Econo box with no radio and no rugs works just fine. I don't need a new car. But get a new car. And I'm in the desert. I know it's true. I can feel it from the tip of my head to the tip of my toes. I got to get a new car. So I go back, and I'm a very practical person. I'm a very non-material person, so I get Consumer Reports, and I read. I'm going to say, I'm going to buy the car that's the most reliable car. And it was a sports car. It was a Toyota Celica. So I went down to the Toyota dealer. This is 1983. So I went down to the Toyota dealer, and but they don't have any. They're because of Consumer Reports, they're so popular, you have to wait 6 months to get one. You have to order from the factory, which means that you pick the color, you pick the interior. So naturally, I picked brown. If you're going to get a sports car, pick brown with a beige cloth interior. And they didn't offer it without a radio, so I had to get a radio and a tape player, but you know, I figured I'd deal with that when the time came. So anyway, they only had one on display there, and it was a beautiful, shiny, black, super sport model with Recaro seats that by themselves probably cost $10,000. And it was a special edition with the sports racing seats and all these things, and the leather and all this stuff. And I kept kind of looking at it, I guessed, with certain kind of allure in my eyes. And he said to me, do you like that car? I said, whoa, it's okay. He said, well, the guy who was supposed to buy it, it was special ordered, but he's got 10 minutes to pick it up, and if he doesn't, you can drive off with it. And it was hardly any more money than the other one. I don't know why. It changed my life. Now, cars can't change your life, or can they? Well, no. A change in spirit of consciousness changes your life. And my thing was, not that I'm materialistic, but because I had a rigid idea of what I was supposed to do, and I was a Pharisee. I was separating myself from life. I often share about Mother Teresa, how she required every one of her workers in Calcutta to do two things: 1 hour of prayer and devotion, 1 hour of playing. They had board games, they had ping pong, they had basketball. They had to, and she said if they didn't play for an hour, they had to go home. Why? Because you can't separate yourself. You're the spirit and you're the light. You've got to have that childlike part of yourself. You've got to be that child. But I had this idea of what a minister was. You know, I had a friend of mine told me that he tried out in a church, and the board actually met him at the airport. They didn't know what he looked like, and so it's the days before the internet. And And so they told him a funny story. They said that they'd walked up to a guy and said, "Are you Reverend Jones?" And the guy said, "Reverend Jones? No, it's my ulcer that makes me look like this." You know? It's like, I had that view, you know? That kind of holding yourself back. But where in your life do you hold yourself back? What steps can you take to engage with life, to say yes to life, to say yes to life? I remember I had a church once across the street. There was a very conservative church, and they had a sign on a Sunday morning saying, "The joys of abstinence." And ours said, "Say yes to life." You know, so I mean, you know, just say yes to life. That means, and then asking yourself, where do you need to cut back that's keeping you from fulfilling what is yours to do? That's what Warren Buffett was talking about. Commit to something, say yes, and say it with your whole heart, your whole being, and then say no to everything else that doesn't fit it. So, in my case, okay, I clothe myself with generous spirit. And every day, it moves with me in everything I do, wherever I go. Okay? What's standing in the way of that? Well, what's the opposite of the generous spirit? That part of me that stays in my head, that's just commenting on everything, that's checking on everything. So in you, now you're going to have a chance at the end of the talk, so I'm giving you a few minutes here to work on it, so you have to listen to me. So you can kind of think about this. What am I committing to? What is my spiritual commitment? What is my spiritual step I'm taking during these 40 days? What is my spiritual commitment? Make it simple. Keep it very, very simple. And then embrace it. And then, what's in the way of it? What would keep me? What has been keeping me? Because let's face it, if there wasn't something already keeping you from it, you'd already be doing it. You'd already be there. So what is it? What's keeping me from this? And then that's what you give up. And it's not chocolate. You can give up chocolate if you want to, and maybe it'll symbolize this. But whatever you want to do. But I'm saying that give up something that's impeding the flow. You're a flowing being. You are God's flowing energy in the universe, moving and expressing. That's who you are. I mean, you are not from this earth. You are infinite spirit, just clothed in a body and a personality. These are just secondary to you. You are infinite spirit, and that infinite spirit is flowing through you and everything. You can even hear it playing. You can hear the sound of it. Oh, just like my vision in the desert. And it will call forth your expression of your beingness, and you will move with it. You will move with it if you commit to it. But you've got to be willing to commit to it. There have been times in my life that it really was about stretching myself and stretching my ability and willingness to embrace life itself and not live in a narrow, limited little cage. I went through a period of time, I do dream work, and I went through I had dream after dream of being in an amusement park where there were no people and nothing was going. I was in an abandoned amusement park. And I did my dream work on it. Guess what an abandoned amusement park meant? It meant I'd abandoned my amusement. And so I decided that once a week I was going to go on a safari, and I was going to travel around, and I was going to do something, go to a place I'd never been before, do something I'd never done before. And then embrace that and be on an adventure. I called it a safari. And as long as I did that, I was fine. And then when I fell into my old pattern, guess what I started having dreams of? An abandoned amusement park. And that brought me back. It's been years and years since I've had my abandoned amusement park dream. So where in your life can you make a commitment to the greater good? Where in your life can you make a commitment to the greater expression of joy? And where in your life can you make a commitment to the greater expression of the truth of your being? That means reaching out. You know, I read a weird statistic this last week. It said that people who are looking for work, the number one factor that gets people jobs more than any other statistically is whether they volunteer while they're out of work. 3 times faster. People who volunteer get jobs 3 times faster. You could say that perhaps they're meeting people while they're volunteering, maybe. But no, I think it just has to do with energy. It has to do with the flow of energy. So you say to yourself, where in my life am I stuck? Wow, where can I give forth more of the who that I am, of the beingness that I am, of that soul that I am, and Maybe, and then you ask yourself, well, how's it going to make me show up different? Maybe I'll take a little more time with somebody. Maybe I'll cut somebody a little slack. Be more generous in my willingness to something. I don't know. So ask yourself about this. So there's this wonderful story about this woman and Jesus' generous spirit. I love this. Because really here he differentiates between behavior and the essence of someone's being. Okay. All the people came to him. He sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and Pharisees, there they are, the separated ones, that's in you and me, brought to him a woman caught in adultery, and they set her in his midst and said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act. Now Moses in his law commanded us that such a person should be stoned to death. Now what do you say? And they said this, testing him to see if he was going to have something that they'd give them to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and started writing in the ground with his finger as if he couldn't hear them. Neener, neener, neener. Right? So when they continued to ask him, he raised himself up and he said to them, Well, let the one without sin throw the first stone at her. And again he stooped down and started writing in the ground again. And those who heard it, being convicted by their own consciences, went out by one, beginning with the oldest, even to the youngest. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman was standing in their midst. And when Jesus raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, Good woman, where are those accusers of yours? Hasn't anybody accused you? No one, Lord. Well, neither do I condemn you. Go and do it no more. So he's talking, he didn't condone her behavior, but what he's doing is he's saying, he was a generous spirit. He was a generous spirit. The only place he had seemed to lack generosity was self-righteous religious condemnation. And there, he came through pages of this stuff, basically telling the people, don't listen to those people. Those people will put you, he said, in the same trap that they're living in. And so you can make that decision right now in your life to move yourself into a more generous spirit. A more generous spirit, a spirit of life and generosity. And so ask yourself, where in my life am I withholding that generous spirit with others? Okay, with others, but now most of all with yourself. With yourself. Where are you putting the hammer on yourself? Where are you putting the criticism and the lack of grace with yourself? This is what's called grace. It's graceful and it's gracious. It's that graceful part of yourself that seeks to have greater expression in your life. I had an experience of this back 40 years ago. It was a movement of spirit that it's related to this visualization of the blanket around your shoulders, because truly the blanket around your shoulders has to do with the heart chakra, which is within this area. And this also has to do with that. I had gone through a situation in my life where everything in my life went wrong. I mean, absolutely anything you could imagine went wrong. And I sat on the edge of my bed and I just said, help. Now sometimes the best way to get out of lethargy, to get out of an old, stagnant, stale level of consciousness is to do affirmations, is to take affirmations and work with them. And in this case, it was a simple affirmation, just help. And at that moment I felt a warmth in my heart. A warmth in my heart. And I could feel a tingling. And the words came to me, and I got them from Ezekiel. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. And this spirit that was moving through me, I knew in that moment that all I needed to do was to go into my heart, just go into my heart, and just feel myself there. And I would know what to do in every situation in my life. I would just intuitively know what it was that was mine to do. And so, and in every one of those situations, I just went into my heart, and I just assumed I knew what to do, and I would just know. Have you ever just taken it on? And I found out that sometimes I thought I was assert myself, but I didn't assert myself. I was yielding. Other times, I felt like I was supposed to be yielding, and I spoke out. You find yourself in these situations just flowing with it. So one thing you can do is to say, my Christ consciousness already knows what to do in this situation. My Christ consciousness already knows what this person needs. My Christ consciousness already knows how to handle this person, or how to help this person, or how to deal with this situation. And then show up in it. Then step forward in it. It's like casting the energy forward and then moving into it. And sometimes affirmations like that will make a huge difference in your life. I learned about the power of affirmations and moving your spirit and getting out of a stuck, stale, old consciousness when I was in high school. My minister gave me a book called The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. How many of you have ever seen that book, The Game of Life and How to Play It? It's a really good book, and it's filled with affirmations. And so I would take the affirmations from that book, I memorized them, and I would say them to myself on the way home from high school. And, I was a very withdrawn and very pharisaical, very separated kind of person. But that year, I just opened up. And people came up to me and they said, "You've changed. You've changed. What happened to you?" It's because I took these words and I made them a part of myself. It's another way to enfold yourself or enrobe yourself in new energy and new life. So ask yourself, what kind of affirmations can I take? Where can I put that energy forward in my life and make a difference and move with a new spirit? Take your commitment that you're making for Lent. Take your commitment that you're making for Lent and turn it into an affirmation. Turn it into an affirmation. And then move with it. And don't just say it out loud. Go into meditation with it. Say it silently. Whisper it. Move into the silence. And then when your mind wanders, bring yourself back to it. And take it in. We talked last week about the two different forms of prayer. Meditation and prayer. Silence and speaking aloud. And I remember James Stillett Freeman, Unity's Poet Laureate, sharing with me how he said the difference between Charles Fillmore and me, and Fillmore was his personal teacher, he said was that Fillmore got the deepest and greatest healing experiences through silent meditation, but I'm a word guy, so I would use spoken word out loud. And so do what works for you, and try both out, and see where you can go with it. Well, this is our opportunity to go into a time of meditation, of committing ourselves to that spirit, to that generous spirit, and making your Lenten commitment. And so right now, just get in touch with what is your commitment for Lent. What is your commitment for Lent? And if you don't have one, you can use mine. I clothe myself in generous spirit. And maybe for you it's to show up in love. Or maybe for you it's to express your enlightenment. And now ask yourself, how could this, what's in the way between yourself and this commitment? What prevents you from doing that? And make a commitment to give that up for Lent. Critical thinking, self-condemnation, whatever it is. And now ask yourself, how will my commitment change how I show up each and every day in my life? And imagine yourself in your interactions during the day. Imagine a twinkle in your eye, a willingness to extend yourself, generous spirit, and see how it shows up in your life. We say thank you. Thank you, God, for our commitment this Lenten season, not to the giving up of something, but taking our next spiritual step and then letting go of whatever's in the way. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. Now take a deep breath and let it out. Let go of all the papers in your hands. Just open yourself, because you're going to need to be open to this wonderful visualization that is my personal Lenten commitment. You'll come up with your own, but I want you to join with me in mine. So set aside all that you have in your hands and move into this moment and just imagine with these words, I clothe myself in generous spirit. That you're taking around your shoulders, enrobing yourself, enveloping and wrapping yourself in a soft, warm and beautiful, could be a blanket, could be a stole, could be a robe, whatever it is you want it to be, but it's warm and it's energetic, it's made out of love. The energy of love itself, softer than the softest, most downy physical comforter. All around your shoulders and enveloping you. Not separate from you, not something you put on, but made of energy that becomes a part of you. I clothe myself with generous spirit. Each day I let it move with me in everything I do, wherever I go. And so I imagine that if I let myself be enveloped in a generous spirit of love, grace, generosity itself, how and where will that generosity express? How will I show up differently? Where will I extend myself where I haven't before? Where will I show up in grace? Give somebody a little slack. Pay attention to someone's pleading eyes. Care enough to stop and notice the needs of others. I clothe myself in a generous spirit for myself as I feel the warmth of this enveloping energy, blanket, robe around me. And I feel it vibrating in soft energy, moving into my whole being, not separate from me. Nothing separated, but one. And when my mind wanders, I bring it back to feeling the energy all around me, enrobing me in warmth and grace, warmth and love, warm energy, generous spirit. And as I move into the silence, I feel, know the tingling, warm energy. And then I imagine, how do I show up differently in my life? Where does this show up differently for me? And I just take a moment and I keep with it, feeling this energy around my shoulders. The energy of grace enrobes me. The energy of grace envelops me. I enfold myself. I clothe myself. Infinite spirit. A generous spirit. A warm spirit that extends and reaches out. Each day I let it move with me in everything I do, wherever I go. I move with grace. I flow with grace. I heal in grace. I feel connected. And I know my generous spirit knows what's needed in every circumstance. My generous spirit is leading me to my healing. My generous spirit is leading me to the guidance that I need. My generous spirit is supplying me. As I am giving this generous spirit, so I am receiving. And so it is. And so it is. Well, today we're going to give with a generous spirit. That's what we're about. We're expanding our ability to give and receive. So, I expand my ability to give and receive. Together. I expand my ability to give and receive. And silently. And again, aloud together. I expand my ability to give and receive. And so it is. Amen.